Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for being here today in this webinar. As you know, this session was supposed to be an in-person event at the Benjamin Franklin Library, but due to the current situation that we have, Gordon and Bentley University, they have canceled their travel, either international travel. So now we have this session online. So thank you everyone for being here on time. Here with us, we have Gordon Berridge, Associate Director of Graduate Admissions at Bentley University. And then he will be sharing with us tips on applying to graduate programs in the US. I will appreciate if everyone can please mute their microphones. At the end, we will ask you to, while we have the presentation, you can type your questions if you have any. And then at the end, Gordon will be able to answer your questions. Okay, let's start just by explaining everyone what Education USA is. Would you please help me? Perfect, thank you. Great. Education USA, as you know, it's a global network of advising centers from the US State Department. All of our events like this one, online or in person, they are free of access to everyone. We can help you to find the different options that you have to study at US higher education institutions. Next one. We currently have about 26 centers in Mexico. If you don't live in Mexico City, that's where I am the advisor. If you don't live here, you can contact us so we can tell you which one is the closest center to you. This is what we do. We guide you through the whole process of studying even English program or undergraduate or graduate program. We can help you with the whole admission process. So we know that this session will be really helpful to you if you're interested in studying in the US. Okay? And now I will give the time to Gordon to start this presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And again, thank you all once again for joining me online this evening. I am so sorry that I couldn't be there in person. I was really excited to come back to Mexico. I'm there several times a year. It's always one of my favorite places to go. So, however, the university just felt with the current situation here in the US with the coronavirus, that it was just better for all of us to kind of stay home, stay safe for right now. But I do hope to be down there again in the near future, and I'd be more than happy to once again try to reschedule and do an in-person interview or meet any of you in person the next time I'm down there. But we're going to talk a little bit this evening about applying to graduate schools here in the United States. Just to give you a little background on myself, again, my name is Gordon Berridge. I'm the Associate Director for Graduate Admissions here at Bentley University. I've been here at the university in admissions now for about 7 years. I've been in higher education now, probably for close to 16 or 17 years now. And so a lot of the tips that I'm going to give you are going to be a little general in nature for any university, but they're also some you probably will be very aware of, others you might not. And so as we go through this, hopefully some of these you can use to best give you the best opportunity at submitting a great application. Just once again, I just want to remind everybody, if you can just kindly just mute your microphone, that way we can all hear what's going on here. So the agenda today, we're going to talk about how to choose the right business school here in the United States. We're going to talk about what to do before the application, and then also the graduate school application, some tips I'm going to give you. And then at the end, I'm just going to talk real briefly about my specific university today. So getting started, so choosing the right business school in the United States, the very first thing you want to do is make sure that you are looking for an institution that is accredited and specifically regionally accredited. There are currently 6 regional accreditations here in the United States. For example, here in the Northeast region in New England, we have what's called NEASC. NEASC. So all the universities in my area, you know, Bentley, Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Boston College, we're all regionally accredited, and that's really important. So as you look at institutions in the United States, make sure the first thing you start with is that regional accreditation. And again, that's where Education USA can really help you get started, is making sure that you are looking for the best programs. The next thing you're going to want to look for is program-specific accreditation. When it comes to business schools, there are really three top ones in the world. The one here in the USA that's the most popular with business schools is AACSB. They do also accredit international schools. You have quite a few there in Mexico. And then there's also EQUIS and AMB. Those are the top three business school accreditations that you want to look for your business schools here in the US. And the next thing I want to talk a little bit about when you're choosing your business school is the difference between an MBA and a master's. I get this question quite often, what the difference is between an MBA and a master's. So traditionally an MBA, they're traditionally 2-year-long programs. They tend to be for people with a few years of experience, but they give you a broad spectrum of information across all of the different functional areas of business. Everything from human resources to finance, accountancy, strategy, operations, and really giving you all of the different functional areas within the business world. Where a master's degree, they're very much more specific. They tend to be very much more narrowly focused, but a deeper dive. So for example, a master's in business analytics would really focus on the analytics and business analytics and data-driven information and how that would be used in the business world. They tend to be also a master's degrees anywhere from 12 to 18 months, where an MBA is going to be anywhere from 18 to 24 months. Typically here in the US, but those do change a little bit here and there. So next thing is really before the application even starts, make sure you're doing your research. And again, Education USA is a great place to really get yourself started on doing your research and being able to figure out which school is going to be the best fit for you, which region of the United States. And once you narrow down your choice, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is contact the Office of Admissions. Reach out to them, whether by email, by phone. And what you want to do is see if you can schedule a time to speak with them. Because as I go through these tips, quite often I'm going to say you're going to want to reach out to the admissions department to review or to ask them specific questions, because each institution sometimes does things a little bit differently at the graduate school level. And also, that's really honestly where your application is going to start. Because there are a lot of times when I've developed really great relationships with applicants before they've even applied. And so when we are sitting down as an admissions committee reviewing applications, having that personal knowledge or that personal connection to that applicant can really be something that I can speak to more when we're talking about different applications and talking about students as they're being accepted into the program. So don't be afraid to reach out and make that connection with that university. And I can tell you, we love it when students do that. After you've talked with the admissions office, don't be afraid to ask to maybe speak with a professor, maybe some alumni, whether it's some alumni there in Mexico that might be near you, or some alumni here at the university, or even current students. I know we do that quite often. We schedule times to speak with our current students here that might be interested in a similar program as you, that can tell you about their experience so far here at the university. If you're able to, try to attend events in person. If you can't, you can do this. A lot of universities offer online opportunities for students to really get a sense of what the university is like, to gain a lot of information. And then also, a lot of times universities will offer you maybe an application fee waiver for attending their online or in-person events. So that can be a great way to save a little bit of money, especially if you're going to be applying to several different graduate schools. You know, a graduate school application can run anywhere from $100 to $200 or more per application. So you can really save a significant amount of money by attending these events and trying to get these application fee waivers. But more importantly, you're just getting more and more great information on the school that you're going to choose. Now, when it comes to trying to find the right school, one piece of advice I want to give you is be careful. Don't let someone else speak for you, especially at the graduate school level. I am so excited when we have, spouses or parents or friends or relatives join them in the search process. But when it comes to meeting with an admissions officer, you want to make sure that you are speaking for yourself. We really want to get to know you. Again, we're happy to answer questions from friends and family and spouses and loved ones, but we really mostly want to talk to you. So mainly make sure at the graduate school level that you're the one doing the questions and asking for what you're looking for. And then the other one is, don't allow someone else to choose for you the program or the institution. I often joke that finding the right program is a lot like finding the right partner in life. You want to make sure that it's going to be right for you and not for anybody else, because you are going to live with this institution. You are going to live with this program. So choose the program that's going to be right for you and make you happy. And so these are all really good tips you want to kind of put into place before you even start the application. So once you've done all these things, you've gone to Education USA, you've done your research, you've reached out to the admissions department, you've talked to alumni, you've spoken to some friends, you've done your research, now you're ready to start applying to those handful of schools. So this is a typical application process. Your application materials typically include, well, an application fee, but again, hopefully we can get those waived for you. They're going to include some written essays, resume or CV, letters of recommendation, your transcripts, an interview. There's going to be an official GMAT or GRE score, and then a TOEFL or an IELTS exam for all of our international students. So here are a couple of tips that I want to go over with you for the essay. Now, when it comes to writing the essay, please make sure you read the question carefully. Again, we understand that you're submitting multiple applications and maybe have to write more than one essay. But really make sure that when you're submitting that essay that you're reading the question carefully and that you're answering that question that they are proposing, because that's really important to us. And we really do read through every one of those essays that come in. You want to make sure that you're aware of any minimums or maximums. So for example, if you're submitting your essay online, sometimes if there's a maximum of, let's say, 5,000 words, and it's above 5,000 words, sometimes those additional words can be cut off, and you don't want the bottom of your essay being cut off. So make sure you're really aware of those minimums or maximums of characters or words when it comes to submitting your essay. And this hopefully goes without saying, proper spelling and grammar. So you want to make sure that you review that essay, review it again, and then here's one of my little insider secret tips. Have someone else review your essay. But what I want you to do is, before you give them the essay, make sure you do not give them the question that you're trying to answer. So don't tell them what the question is, don't give it to them. Have them read through that essay, and then at the end, I want you to ask them if they can tell you what question you're trying to answer. If they can tell you what question you're trying to answer in that essay, then you know you've done a good job. If their answer doesn't quite seem to match up with the question that you're trying to answer, then that means that you might have to go back and re-review that essay to make sure that you're addressing that question. So that's a great tip. I've used it myself when I applied for my MBA program. I know some other students have used it, and they've really found that to be really beneficial. And just remember, the details are important as you're going through. So again, make sure you're doing that review before you submit that final essay. Now, when it comes to a resume or a CV, again, same thing, proper spelling and grammar. And now most universities will accept either, but you do want to make sure you're reaching out to the application or to the admissions office to ask them if they prefer a resume or a CV. Some universities here in the US will want a standard 1 or maybe 2-page resume. But other universities, it's fine either way, whether that's a resume or a CV. Now, one thing I do want to tell you, when it comes to your position, please be careful to not over-exaggerate your position or your skill set. If you are a team lead or if you are a simple, worker within your organization, don't over-exaggerate that. Because we do check in on those things, we do review that, we do go back and look at those, so please make sure that you are not over-exaggerating your roles or your positions or your skills. The other thing is make sure it's in an easy to read format as you're going through. The reason I say that is because an easy to read format, you want to make sure it's not too long. I'll give you a specific example. Most recently, I had somebody who submitted a great CV. On the end of the CV, though, they had 3 pages of conferences that they've attended. Great, wonderful, but 3 pages of conferences you've attended doesn't really do much for your application, at least when it comes to ours. So, you want to keep it in an easy to read format that we can go through. Because again, realize we're reading hundreds of applications through these process. Also be careful on abbreviations or industry terms. As much as we try to keep up to date on every single industry term and all the abbreviations, if you're going to use them, we ask you that please at least once within your essay or even your resume or CV, that you write that out at least once so we know what that is. And if it's a very specific industry term that goes towards your industry, define that for us as well. That can really help us out in determining your qualities for the program. Put on some contact information on there in case we need it to reach out to you. And then also, again, keep it to professional and educational experience. Again, we want to stay away from those 3 pages of conferences that you've attended. Again, keep it professional, educational, and in simple, easy to read format as we go through. The letters of recommendation. So when it comes to the letters of recommendation, make sure that you confirm with your school how you would like or how they would like to receive your recommendations. So there are typically 2 ways that a university will receive recommendations. There's the traditional letter format in which your recommender will simply write a letter on your behalf or email, and that will be submitted along with your application. Although there are some universities, again, like Bentley, who instead of receiving a letter, what we do is we send them a form. You give us their name, their email address, and the university will then send them an email, and in that email will be a link that they click on, and then they're going to fill out a form, a recommendation form on your behalf. So you're going to want to make sure that when you're talking to those admissions officers, when you're talking to them, make sure you're finding out how they would like their letters of recommendation. And then when you go to ask your recommenders, make sure you ask them first before using them. You don't want them to get a surprise invitation. That you want to make sure that you tell them that it's coming, ask them to use them, and also choose wisely. If you notice any hesitation in your recommender, if you see any hesitation in them wanting to do it, stop. Choose somebody else. You want to choose somebody that can be the best for you. But also, when you're choosing them, don't choose them based on their title. I'll give you another great example. I had somebody one time who gave me their CEO as their recommendation. Wonderful, except for they were about 4 positions removed away from the CEO. And so when we received the recommendation from them, it was very general in nature. There was no specific details because the CEO was so far removed from this person that they weren't able to give us good details. I would rather see it from your direct manager, supervisor, somebody that can speak specifically about your ability to do an advanced degree like this. The other thing is, be careful not to choose family. I'm going to assume that your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your aunt, your uncle think you're a pretty great candidate for the program. So you're just going to want to make sure that you don't choose family. Now, I know that some people do work for family-run companies. If that's the case, I recommend maybe using a client or maybe a vendor that you've worked with before within your organization. The closely, again, they can speak to your abilities. Obviously, you want to make sure that if you're an international student submitting a recommendation, you want to make sure that your recommender can speak English and write English, excuse me. And then also you want to give them time to write a thoughtful letter. The standard is 1 to 2 weeks for them to give you and write a really nice, thoughtful recommendation. You really want to make sure you're not doing it the day before and rushing it, even if the due date's tomorrow. You really want to plan ahead and make sure that you're giving them plenty of time to submit that recommendation, and that they're going to give you a thoughtful, positive recommendation as you go through. And again, I just want to remind you, if you have any questions as we go through this, please feel free to write them in the chat box. I'll do my best to keep an eye on that as I'm going through this. If you have any particular questions, or if you prefer to ask them, I will be pausing in a few minutes to stop and get any questions that you might have. So transcripts. So please make sure when you submit your transcripts for your application that they have to be in, if they are in a different language, please make sure they are officially translated. I've had students in the past who've tried to translate them themselves. That's great, but they do need to be official translations. Again, by reaching out to talk to your admissions office where you're submitting your application, they can give you recommendations. For example, WES.org, WES is a great organization that a lot of universities use, but there is about probably 20 or 30 different official translation documents or companies that you can use that will do that translation. Make sure you're able to provide original copies of them for your application. Although I will say that some institutions will accept unofficial transcripts as part of your application, but you will need them prior to beginning your program, so make sure you are able to provide those. Also, you want to make sure if you attended more than one school that you want to make sure that you get transcripts from all of the schools you attended. So if you transferred or did a semester abroad, you want to make sure that we see all of those transcripts as part of your application. And so with that being said, same thing, time. Give yourself enough time. The biggest mistake you can do is, again, trying to rush through your application. Give yourself enough time to get your transcripts, to collect all of those before you submit that. As you go through. And then again, here in the US, we use a standard 4.0 GPA grading average, or A, B's, and C's. If you're outside of that, and I think in Mexico, I want to say there's at least 2 that I'm familiar with grading options. But just make sure if it's, whatever it is, make sure you provide that grading key so that we can easily look at your transcripts as we're going through that process. But again, if you get that official translation, a lot of institutions will do the academic translation for you as well and put it into US standards as you go through with your transcripts. This is probably the most intimidating piece of the application for a lot of candidates. It's the interview. Most applications for graduate school do require an interview as part of your application. Now, interviews come in 2 forms, either in person or video, similar to what we're doing this evening. First things first, proper attire. If you're going to do an interview, please make sure that this is, graduate school. You're applying to an advanced program, so you want to dress like you're going for a business interview as you go through. The other thing is, have a couple of questions ready to ask. Show us that you've done a little research, whether that's having a question about maybe a particular course that you're really interested in, or if there's a professor that you're really interested in knowing more about, or maybe there's a particular question about the application process, something within there that you can ask as you go through. Again, usually 2 to 3 questions is a good way to have before you go into your interviews. If it is in person, please make sure you show up on time, not too early, not late at all as you go through. So you want to make sure that you show up on time. Usually a good rule is usually 5 to 10 minutes as they go through. I see a question popped up. The question is, for the CV, should I translate and use abbreviation for specific institutions or secretariats in Mexico, such as? Yes, I would. I would definitely do that for, there at least once. I know that that's a big abbreviation, but at least once for all of those, because sometimes there are multiple people reading applications. I know somebody like myself, I see a lot of applications from Mexico, so I might be aware of that, but if we have other people on the admissions committee or professors that are on that and they might not be aware of that specifically, I would at least once in there spell that out. Thank you so much for that question. That was a great question. So again, for the interview, not too early, not too late. Again, usually 5 to 10 minutes showing up on time is perfect. If it is a video interview, please make sure you're in a quiet place where you won't be distracted. I'll give you an example. Again, one time I was doing an interview with a young woman. She was in Egypt. She was sitting out on her terrace. We're doing the video interview. It's going great. All of a sudden, I start hearing chanting and screaming and yelling. Lo and behold, right below her terrace, there was a protest march going down her street. And so that was a bit distracting through the interview, not only for her, but for me as well. So again, you want to find yourself a nice quiet place. Again, and this is where Education USA can sometimes come in handy. I know that I'm not sure about the one there at the library, but I know that there are a lot of locations that do offer quiet places where you can do video interviews, where they do have a more stable, especially if you're in an area that doesn't have great internet connection, that can be a great use as well as you're going through that process. So again, try to find that nice quiet place that you can use. If it's in person, bring a couple extra copies of your resume just in case they need it. I think that's a good little tip. And it's perfectly fine to take notes. Don't be afraid to take notes as you're going through your interview. That can also be helpful too if they ask you a question, to write down the question that they ask you. So as you're going through, if you tend to, if you happen to lose your train of thought, then you can easily look down and have that question right there available to refresh your memory as you're going through. And then this is really important too. Make sure you follow up with a thank you email. Get the interviewer's email address or contact information so you can at least send them a quick thank you and say thank you so much for the interview. I think that's, again, a nice one of those little things that can really help you stand out from someone else who might not be doing this. And it's a good rule to do it within at least 24 hours after the interview as you go through. So make sure you get that email from that individual with that person. Okay, the GMAT and GRE, big thing with this. These are the two biggest tests that graduate schools take. If you're applying to other graduate schools, like maybe a law school or something like that, they take the LSATs. But when it comes to taking any graduate level test, you really want to make sure, again, you're going to give yourself enough time to study. On average, I say 3 to 6 months. If you're a current student, maybe you're just finishing up your bachelor's degree, or maybe you're doing another degree or program, you might not need as much time, but typically 3 to 6 months is a good kind of standard for studying for that. A great place for resources, you can find great resources online. Once again, Education USA centers that I've seen around the world, they do sometimes offer books that you can borrow, excuse me, or they'll have books there at the centers that you can go and that you can utilize to help you study, or maybe they even have different locations where you can go, and sometimes there are resources where you can go and you can, there are some paid courses that you can take as well to help you study for the GMAT or GRE. Now, when it comes to taking the test, it is fine. It's fine to take it again if you have to. There are tons of practice tests, but if you go to take the test for the first time and maybe you don't do quite as well as you would have liked, it's fine. It's fine to take it again. I've yet to see a university who has not been fine with having somebody take the test once or twice. I've even seen it done 3 or 4 times. So again, if you need to take it again, completely fine. Don't worry about it. Again, for me and everyone I know in this industry, I've not seen anybody who's taken that as a negative for taking it again. But when it comes to taking a test, make sure you, again, reach out to that admissions office. Make sure you ask what test they prefer, whether that's the GMAT or whether that's the GRE, because sometimes they will take one over the other as they go through. Oh, yep, they do. They do right there in Mexico. They do have books to use for the GRE, the GMAT, the IELTS, the TOEFL, which I'll talk about in a second. And they do have great information also on writing an essay for the graduate admissions, CV, et cetera. So again, great resource to use there. Knowing which test to take is best for you. So example, between the GMAT and GRE, the GMAT, if you tend to be more skilled in quantitative areas, math, things like that, the GMAT might be a better exam for you. If you're more qualitative, less quantitative, the GMAT might be a better fit. So take a look at both of those. Know which one works best for you. If the university that you're applying to does take both, or whatever exam, if there's multiple options, make sure you're looking at the exam that works best for you. And then also you want to know when those testing dates are. I know there are certain locations that sometimes they may offer it every week and sometimes only once or twice. So you just want to make sure you look around. Let's see, we had a question here. Physics test dates in Mexico, but just can't find them. You know what? I'm not sure about the GRE subject and physics test dates in Mexico. But what I can do is I can take a look at that and I can send that out. Oh, there you go. Perfect right there. So letting us know where those are. But again, know when those test dates are, again, and that's where Education USA can really be benefit in helping you find those test dates. Because especially if you have to take the GMAT, I know specifically if you have to take it more than once, the GMAT, there is a waiting period between when you can have to retake it again. So just make sure that you know those waiting periods as well between the GMAT. Oh, I'm sorry, did somebody have a question? No, okay. Let's go on to the English as a second language testing. When it comes to the TOEFL and the IELTS are probably the two most popular that are out there for most graduate school universities. So when it comes to preparing for the ESL test, if you're able, try to see if you can find a native speaker to practice with. And again, that's the biggest thing when it comes to really strong ESL scores, is making sure that you practice. If you don't know a native speaker, that's completely fine. You can go online and watch online videos of native speakers and try to copy them. A good thing for this is maybe go on and looking at YouTube or TEDx, TED Talk videos. Again, looking at business tips. You want to find people that really articulate their words that go through. And so that can be really helpful. And it's going to seem a little weird, but articulating and trying to follow them is really important. Talk out loud. If you have to do it in your room by yourself, that can be really beneficial. It's just continuing to practice. Also, look into reading things like the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, trade journals, maybe university textbooks. You want to look for things that are a little higher, the English is a little bit more, I guess, advanced, more big business English. As much as we all like the entertainment and the gossip magazines, you really want to try to go for something with a little bit more advanced to it. Again, like the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, things like that, that can really be beneficial for you. Again, practicing your articulation. And the same thing with, as I mentioned, with the GMAT and the GRE is the ESL testing. Know the dates of the testing. Know which test the university that you're applying to accepts. And again, pretty standard is the IELTS exam and the TOEFL academic one. Make sure you're taking the academic version of both the TOEFL and the IELTS exam. And then also really important, find out the minimum score needed. Most universities are in the 90 to 100 range, but if you're gonna be taking the exam, I think if you're really gonna look for something strong, try to go for at least a 100 out of 120 points. If you can get over that 100, I think almost every university would be really positive about that 100 plus, again, out of that 120 points. So when it comes to the TOEFL, go for a 100. Usually for the IELTS, if you're going for a band of 7 out of 9, would be the best as well. So, but again, reach out to your local university, reach out to the university, and they can be really beneficial in helping you figure out where those minimums are for them. Because I'll be honest, I have seen people who get below those scores. That can be an automatic denial for a lot of universities if you're below their minimum. So by having that conversation with the admissions office, you can really kind of find out where you're going to be in that process. And if that is potentially a automatic denial through that process. Okay, so I've been talking for a little bit now. I know I've thrown a lot of information at you. I want to pause for a second and see if there are any questions. And you can, again, you can either type them here in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself for a second, I'd be happy to do it that way too.
Yeah, hi. I don't know if you can hear me well.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, well, maybe we are not in that moment yet, but how is about any scholarship or any help for the education that we are looking for? I mean, there are opportunities, or we have to check in banks or something to get that scholarships, or how can we check for that opportunities?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I know that that is incredibly important. When it comes to scholarships from most universities, again, that's going to be where reaching out to the university is going to be really important, in talking to the admissions office. Because again, every university is slightly different when it comes to graduate school applications. A lot of schools are merit-based, and merit-based is based on the quality of your application. Some universities for international students do offer need-based, but I would say majority of the ones that I can think of are mostly merit-based. There are some banks and institutions that offer it. Again, this is where the Education USA can be really beneficial as well in helping you determine, because there are some, if you're going to be studying in the United States, there are some financials that you will need to apply for the student visa. Any university can help you out with that as well. For example, I know my university, we have a center that helps international students. But again, when it comes to scholarship, it really varies. The best thing you can do to really make sure to get yourself the best opportunity to scholarship, apply early to an institution. Most institutions start taking applications about a year out from the start date. You know, if you're looking to apply for the fall, most universities will take it about a year out. And just make sure, again, you're using some of these tips that I talked about today through the application to really make your application as strong as possible, especially if it's a merit-based aid for the program. Again, I know at my university, for example, we are merit-based aid, and it's based on the overall quality of your application as we go through. So hopefully that answers your question. I know it's a little general in nature, but it can be very, very specific and nuanced for each different university. But hopefully that does answer your question about that a little bit.
No, yeah, it was perfect. Yeah, you just touched the point, and yeah, as you said, we have to looking for, and well, with the time that you said of a year before, it's just I mean, it's perfect for do that.
Excellent, wonderful. Thank you so much for your question. Any other questions? Oh, okay, we have one here in the chat box. For the translation of the transcript, is it okay if an expert translator accredited by an institution in Mexico does it, or it has to be from an institution from the US? I think that would depend on the expert translator. I have received some expert translations that they are stamped by, by an official in that country, for example, like in Mexico. I would probably say that in that particular situation, a quick email or a phone call to the admissions office would be helpful. I've had students reach out to me and ask that, and typically what I do is I have them give me the name of the person that's going to be doing the translations for them, or the company that they work for, and then usually myself or one of my graduate assistants here will do a little research on that to find out for sure if we'll accept that. But mostly what we're really looking for is that official translation. But again, if you're not quite sure, I'm happy to, if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to look into that specifically for you as we go through. But that is a great question. And again, it just depends on each institution. Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi.
Hi.
I was just listening to you, and there's something you said that caught my attention. You were speaking about business programs, and my area of study is education. So I'm wondering now if this is actually appropriate for me or just for business graduates.
No, that's a great question, and thank you for asking. So when it comes to business schools, I mean, the great thing about business is that business is in every industry. And so, I work in education, and I have my MBA. And so, it's definitely useful regardless of what industry you're in. A lot of times what we find is that when somebody's been working in an industry for many years, maybe they're working their way up through the institution, they will find that at some point, I'll give you a specific example. I had a gentleman, he worked for Johnson & Johnson. He was an engineer for Johnson & Johnson, had been for like 15 years, was moving his way up through the ranks. He eventually became a director. All of a sudden, he found himself doing less engineering and suddenly doing more accounting, finance, management, operations, strategy. And that's when he knew at that point to come back to school and get a business degree. I've seen people from all different walks of life come into the business degree. And again, it's usually looking for those things like strategy, organizational management, leadership skills, maybe some finance or accountancy decision-making processes to help them go forward. So regardless of your background, I think business school, depending on where you want to get into, I mean, if you're looking to become a doctor, obviously getting into a business school isn't going to be the right fit. But, if you're looking for more of that leadership, management, organizational management, operation strategy within your organization, regardless of the career field, I think that can be really beneficial. So absolutely, business schools for everybody.
Thanks.
Of course. Let's see here. Do we have any more opportunities to be accepted if we get a GRE or GMAT certification? I think that would depend on your profile. I think having a GMAT or GRE, especially if you're going to apply for a program, that doesn't require a lot of work experience, a GMAT or a GRE can be really beneficial. There are some programs out there that require the GMAT or GRE, so that is going to be especially important for you to take that. There are some universities too that will offer GMAT and GRE waivers through that process. So if you're looking to waive, so maybe if you don't, maybe you have a lot of experience or you have other qualifications, maybe you already have a master's degree or a PhD in a different area, sometimes universities will waive it for that. But as far as being accepted, I think if there are parts of your application that maybe aren't quite as strong as you would like them to be, and I'll give you a specific example. So let's say you maybe have 3 or 4 years of work experience. You're a little bit different of a person now than you were 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when you graduated from university. Maybe your grades weren't quite that strong or weren't as strong as you would like them to be. That is where a GMAT or GRE exam can really help you to be accepted if another part of your application isn't quite as strong as you would like it to be. Same thing might be for experience. Maybe you don't have a lot of experience coming in because you're a newly graduated candidate. So maybe that's where that GMAT or that GRE can help you stand out a little bit more. Okay, so the SAT, great question. So the SAT, that is for undergraduate programs. So if you're interested in applying for a bachelor's degree here in the United States, students who are applying to get their bachelor's degree here in the US, they have to take the SATs. And the SATs are similar to the GMAT, but again, they're for bachelor's degree programs as opposed to a master's degree or an MBA or something like that. So the SAT would be more for your bachelor's degree, not for your graduate school degree. But I can see where that can be a little confusing because us Americans, we do way too many testing as it is here. So hopefully that answers your question. Great questions. Thank you so much for answering. Any other questions? Okay. So thank you all so much for the questions. I just wanted to kind of give you, just spend the last like 2 or 3 minutes here, just giving you just some quick information about my university. I am located, I'm We're doing this today. I'm in Waltham, Massachusetts, which is just 11 miles or about 19 kilometers outside of the amazing city of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm so thankful to be here. Boston is an amazing city. Boston is known for healthcare. It's known for technology. We have an amazing technology center here in Boston. Boston's also known for pharmaceuticals, the finance industry, and entrepreneurialism. We have a lot of startups here in Boston. We have an entire startup hub down in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is a couple miles from here, which we're part of. And then kind of feeding into all of this is the education industry. There's amazing schools here. In Bentley, we're so proud. I mean, we've been in and around the Boston area for the last 100 years. We started in 1917. And so, you know, over 100 years, we've been in the business world and been such an integral part of Boston. So we're really excited to be part of that, and we're really able to tap into all of those industries here in the Boston area. So the graduate school here at Bentley University, we have, just over 1,200 graduate students. We currently offer 8 different master's degrees and an MBA. Excuse me. We have 58 different countries represented within our student population, and we're about 46% international students from all around the world. So it's really great. So it's a very diverse atmosphere and environment. And not only do we get students from different countries, but we also get students from different career paths. I know somebody mentioned about education, but you know, I've had engineers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, people in finance, accountancy, marketing, sales, all coming back to school for business. So you really get not only diversity from a country perspective and a cultural perspective, but also from a business perspective, a career perspective as well. These are just some of the most recent companies that have hired some of our candidates here at Bentley, and we do a great job. We're consistently ranked among some of the best career service departments in the country for helping our students get jobs. And as a matter of fact, right now we offer several of our master's degrees which are STEM designated. A STEM designated program, STEM, and I'm going to use one of my own tips. STEM is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and math. If a program in the United States is STEM designated, that means that you're able to extend something called OPT, which is optional practical training. And that OPT is something that you do after you graduate. For a program that is not STEM designated, you get 1 year of being able to work in the US on your student visa, so you don't need an additional visa. If it's a STEM degree, they add an additional 2 years. So you get a total of 3 years to work on your student visa here in the US. So for example, my master's in business analytics, marketing analytics, digital innovation, human factors and information design, which is user experience, my audit analytics, and my finance degree with an analytics track, those are all STEM designated. Some of the other programs are not, but the MBA program can be paired with one of my master's degrees, so you can do a dual degree, MBA and master's, and still get that STEM designation as you go through. And again, for my MBA program, you get several different concentrations that you can choose from. It's about a 2-year full-time program. And my MS degrees, my master's degrees, they typically go from anywhere from 1 year to 18 months to complete. So just to review, MBA, 2 years full-time. Depending on foundation course waivers, could be done in as little as 18 months. Master's degrees, anywhere from 1 year to 18 months, depending on the one that you choose. So that's a little bit about me, my university. So here is some great contact information that you can use to contact Education USA. Also, Education USA is going to share with me a little information. And so if you'd like to get some information from me, let us know. I will hopefully be sending everybody who attended this meeting a application fee waiver code, so you can apply if you decide that you do your research, you contact us, you do all those tips with us, that you too can apply to Bentley University with a great application, and you can do it for free as you go through that. So keep an eye out for that in probably the next day or so as we go through. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague there in Mexico City to wrap it up here with all this great contact information.
Thank you, Gordon. Thanks everyone for participating in this webinar. This session was recorded, so we will also share it with you in case you want to watch it again or share it with more people. We will share with you the link and we will also upload it to our YouTube channel. Make sure to contact Gordon. Can you go back to the first slide? Where is your contact information? If you have any more questions, make sure to email him or ask him directly. Does anyone have more questions before we finish? Okay, I don't think we have more questions. No, thank you so much, Gordon, for your time. And as Gordon said, he will be contacting you to give you an application fee waiver and also to share more information about Bentley University. Thanks everyone for being here, and thank you, Gordon, for your time.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening, and I look forward to hearing from you all soon. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.